Peace and blessings of Allah be upon you, dear believers, both men and women. When the sun of the 3rd of Muharram rose upon the barren plains of Karbala, it had illuminated a scene that would echo across centuries. Huge of humble tents being A series of humble tents being pitched not merely for shelter, but for sacrifice. The family of the Prophet, peace be upon him and his progeny, had arrived. But this was no ordinary encampment. These were the tents of sorrow, raised not out of fear, but out of divine duty. Each tent held a world of pain, courage, and certainty. The men within them were not warriors hungry for victory. They were lovers of truth, committed to preserving the essence of Islam. The women who took their place beside them were not bystanders. They were custodians of grief, bearers of legacy, and protectors of divine value. May we carry their legacy not just in words, but in action. May our homes reflect the spirit of Karbala. And may we never allow the values raised on the 3rd of Muharram to fall, even when the world turns dark. And peace be upon those who still raise the banner of truth today. When the family of the Holy Prophet, peace be upon him and his progeny, arrived in Karbala on the 2nd of Muharram, they were not travelers seeking refuge, nor rebels seeking battle. They were the flag bearers of divine responsibility, stepping onto the soil of sacrifice with full awareness of what awaited them. By the 3rd of Muharram, they began to raise their tents, not out of hope for worldly safety, but as a sign of surrender to the will of Allah. Each tent that was fixed into the earth was not merely a structure of cloth and rope. It was a symbol, a declaration, a line drawn between truth and false. The raising of the tents marked a pivotal point in the journey of Imam Hussain, where the spiritual mission of Karbala began to manifest in physical form. These tents represented more than just a temporary dwelling. They were the physical manifestation of a sacred stand. The act of raising them on the plains of Karbala was a conscious, deliberate moment. It was a moment that signified permanence, a refusal to flee, a commitment to confront, and an invitation for humanity to witness the last stand of truth against tyranny. It was not simply a logistical arrangement for the family and companions of Imam Hussain. It was the beginning of a spiritual battlefield where each step, each placement of a tent pole echoed with divine purpose. Imam Hussain was fully aware that Karbala was the land of his martyrdom. He knew through divine knowledge and the traditions of his grandfather and father that the soil he now stood on would drink his blood, the blood of his brothers, his sons, and his companions. He knew that the very tents being raised would be torn down, trampled by the hooves of enemy horses, and set ablaze. Yet still he allowed those tents to rise, not with hesitation, but with serenity. Why? Because he was not reacting to the situation. He was fulfilling a mission. That mission was to preserve the spirit of Islam, not through victory, but through sacrifice. The 3rd of Muharram is the moment when that mission takes on physical presence. The landscape of Karbala begins to transform, no longer an empty desert, but a sacred battlefield where divine truth is to be defended by blood. As the tents were being raised, the companions and family members of Imam Hussain participated in this act with full awareness of what lay ahead. No one questioned the purpose. No one suggested retreat. Even the children, sensing the heaviness in the air, did not complain. There was a spiritual discipline among the camp, a calm acceptance of fate, and a readiness to die for values that transcend time. The mere act of raising tents became a form of worship, a ritual of submission to the decree of Allah. The hearts within those tents were not filled with fear, but with light. They did not see their stay in Karbala as temporary. They saw it as destiny. This moment challenges the believers of every age. What would compel a man to set up home in a place he knows will become his grave? What would inspire women to unpack their belongings in a place they know will soon become a prison? It was not blindness, it was clarity. It was clarity. It was the teachings of the old al-Bayt, which instilled within them the highest form of conviction, that to live with humiliation is worse than to die with dignity. The 3rd of Muharram is not simply a historical note, it is a message. It tells every follower of truth that real preparation is not done in times of comfort, but in the face of certainty of pain. The family of the Prophet did not look for worldly protection. They sought divine proximity. Actions by survival. Even the soil beneath those tents bore witness to the grandeur of their souls. That soil would become sacred, not because of the tents, but because of the people inside them. The raising of those tents was the beginning of the ultimate act of divine obedience. It was a declaration without words, a stand without swords, a sermon without a voice. Karbala was now a canvas, and these tents were the opening strokes of a masterpiece painted in blood and patience. The stand of Imam Hussain in Karbala was not an emotional reaction to political pressure, nor a struggle for power or recognition. It was a divine obligation rooted in the teachings of his grandmother. The al-Bayt never acted out of personal desire or tribal motivation. Their every step was calibrated with divine wisdom. When Imam Hussain stood against Yazid, he was not confronting an individual. He was standing against an entire system of corruption, oppression, and deviation from the path of Islam. His stand was a continuation of the mission of the Prophet to establish justice, uphold truth, and protect the integrity of divine guidance. Imam Hussain did not just prepare himself, he prepared his family and companions. He explained the reality of mission. He gave them a chance to lead. He reminded them that the path ahead would not be easy, but also that it would be noble. Those who stayed were not ignorant of the danger. They chose to remain because they valued truth more than their own lives. This is the essence of spiritual preparation, to be so committed to your values that no threat can break you. Today, the world still needs the lessons of Karbala. In a time where truth is often hidden, where standing for justice is rare, and where patience is mistaken for weakness, the example of Imam Hussain and his companions stands as a guide. We are reminded that true preparation is not in material strength, but in spiritual resolve. That real purpose is not self-interest, but service to Allah. And that patience is not surrender, the quiet strength to endure for a greater cause. Karbala was not just a battlefield, it was a classroom. And its lessons, taught through silence, blood, and prayer, continue to shape the hearts of those who seek to live with meaning and die with dignity. The events of the 3rd of Muharram in Karbala were not the beginning of a tragedy, but the unfolding of a divine mission. The tents that were raised marked more than a temporary shelter. They declared a timeless stand for truth, sacrifice, and unwavering faith. Imam Hussain, al-Bayt, did not come to Karbala seeking victory in numbers or worldly gain. They came with clarity, prepared hearts, and a purpose greater than life itself. The men gave their blood, the women gave their strength, and together they preserved the essence of Islam through unmatched patience and absolute trust in Allah. Their legacy teaches us that the path of truth is never easy, but always worth it. It reminds us that preparation begins with belief, that real strength is found in the hearts that endure, and that silence in the face of injustice is not an option. Karbala calls us not just to mourn, but to reflect, to awaken, and to live by the values Imam Hussain said. And as long as hearts continue to beat for justice, the tents of sorrow raised in Karbala will continue to inspire souls around the world to rise, to stand, to stand.